An innocent pet is adopted by the loving protagonist who has been desperate to find a pet and treat it like a child in order to fill the loneliness and void in his life. This pet happens to be a strange creature known to be very intelligent. Not knowing much about these new pet entities, it turns out too much intelligence can be at times dangerous when it becomes clear this pet has jealousy issues and does anything in its power to be the only one shown love and attention to. Pooh is an alien pet which needs to be fed, washed, and taken care of. The unnamed protagonist seems to live alone, intending to get a pet to fill the loneliness in his house, having someone to take care of. The name of the game is Boo's Revenge, which is confirmed that it's entirely inspired by the popular mobile game named Poe, with the alien pet being called Poe. The protagonist eventually manages to get a pet who, unlike cats or dogs, seem to be much more independent, more like a human child, able to grow fast and have higher cognitive capacity. Meeting the cute smiling little Poe for the first time, or at least having it in the house for the first time, who is patiently waiting for the protagonist to get to it. The very first task on the to-do list is to feed Poe. There's a range of food options in the fridge, which the protagonist can feed Poe with, including fruit, veggies, and fast food, which all seem to be okay to feed Poe with. After managing to feed Poe just enough to feel full, he has to clean Poe getting dirty after feeding. Even though it looks as if Poe has dirt all over it after food, it might be just the oil from all the food that it ate, and being almost the end of the day, it is appropriate to get washed up. The protagonist subsequently takes Poe to the shower, using a normal soap on it and washing it until it is fully cleaned up. Strangely, Poe becomes ill after the shower, requiring medicine to feel better, which might be that it got cold after the shower. The protagonist is not very familiar with this type of pet, hence not knowing if showers are good for them or not. After all that, Poe, being a cute and friendly pet, needs some playtime for entertainment, wanting to play football with the protagonist, which is a great quality way of making long-term memories. After some questionable playtime, kicking the ball very hard towards Poe, it seems to weirdly really enjoy it, soon feeling tired and sleepy. Having a lot of fun with Poe, having someone to take care of and spend some quality time with, the protagonist decides it's time for bed, taking Poe to its designated place to sleep, being some sort of a pet bed or pillow, while he turns off the lamp and gets cozied up on the bed to fall asleep in the same room. After some much needed rest, the night comes to an end, with the protagonist noticing Poe having enlarged a lot more than before, showing how quickly it can grow and mature. Just as he wants to tend to it and feed him, the doorbell rings, with the protagonist opening the door, seeing his new pet has arrived, being a female version of the same alien pet called Paulina. The protagonist got this new pet entirely for Poe to have a companion and not be alone, especially not knowing much about these entities, not knowing how they need to be treated. As soon as the protagonist takes Paulina to the kitchen to feed it, a larger-sized Poe appears right behind the protagonist, having its smile wiped off its face as if unhappy that he is not the one tended to and given attention to. It's clear Poe is jealous, and seeing the protagonist taking care of Paulina, he is instantly upset and demands attention, unhappy that he has to share the house with another pet. All the protagonist intended was for Poe not to be alone, not having any clue whatsoever how jealous Poe can truly become. The protagonist, seeing this as innocent jealousy and possibly sibling rivalry, he gently takes Poe and puts him beside Paulina to feed them both at the same time, so there won't be any jealousy anymore, for neither of them to feel that they are being left out. After feeding both, the protagonist feels some playtime would be appropriate, so they can bond even more like that. Taking Poe first, he already has a smile on his face, depicting that he has already formed some solid memories about the protagonist, seeing him as a parent, not wanting to share him with anyone else. After putting both Poe and Paulina in the game room, the protagonist, who sees them more than just pets, having an entire game room built just for them, decides to go out shopping to fill the fridge, as Poe and Paulina had a large appetite, eating most of what was in the fridge. After a while of shopping and coming back home, the protagonist notices how Po is out of the game room, impatiently waiting for the protagonist's return. Feeling something strange has happened as Paulina is not there, he explores the game room, not seeing Paulina anywhere, when he finds a note left behind, seemingly written by Paulina. Not knowing these pits were intelligent enough to have the ability to read or write, he reads the letter with concern.
Dear Father, I left home. Don't search for me. Love you, Paulina.
Being overwhelmed to know how much she is learning, yet not understanding why Paulina would leave, he turns around, seeing a snoozing and sleepy Po waiting behind him, wanting to go to bed. As he places Po on his bed, turning off the light and trying to sleep, a concerning thought cannot leave his mind to what really happened to Paulina and how the clingy and ever attention-seeking personality of Po is over the top, to the point that his need for attention could be dangerous. Going over the memories of what happened today, he remembers how Po was unhappy and jealous as soon as Paulina entered the house. He was following the protagonist impatiently and always made some sort of sound to attract his attention. Po was so impatient that he couldn't wait for the protagonist to feed Paulina before being fed himself and wanted to be seemingly the only one paid attention to. After leaving the house, Paulina disappeared and he clearly needs to look for her, and the note left behind by her didn't make much sense, as she was not yet mature enough to make these decisions and was not very capable of taking care of herself alone. The size difference between Po and Paulina would also give him a better advantage of being more powerful, which makes it possible that he had something to do with her disappearance. The way the note was written as well, referring to the protagonist as father, it's clear whoever wrote the note sees the protagonist as a father or a parent, and Paulina did not have enough time to yet bond with the protagonist, but someone who did was Po, who had quality time with him, playing ball, getting washed up, and much more, which shows how Po had a longer time with the protagonist to form such a bond. The protagonist becomes almost certain that Po had something to do with Paulina's disappearance, feeling a little worried, yet caring about him enough not to form such strong theories yet. Managing to fall asleep, the protagonist is soon awakened by strange sounds coming from the living room. As he looks around, there's no sign of Po, who is right next to a bookcase with smudges all over the floor. Po looks strange and anxious with his eyes wide open, as if he's done something he's not supposed to, and he is caught red-handed. As the protagonist puts Po back in bed, he inspects the bookcase, which opens to a secret room which he didn't know of before, with a trail of blood leading to a chain hook, which reveals to be the corpse of Paulina being hung on the chain, who has been mercilessly killed, with the protagonist being sure now that Po has been behind this savage act, starting to weep for Paulina, someone he took home to protect, yet taking care to a place far from safety, when Po attacks him from behind and knocks him out. After some time of being out, he suddenly regains his consciousness for a brief moment, noticing that both of his legs have been dismembered, with him being dragged out of the secret room. After some time finally regaining his consciousness fully, being very sore and in pain, looking around, finding himself on Po's bed being stained with blood, noting that he is in fact missing his legs, horrified to what is happening, screaming without being able to control himself. It turns out Po's jealousy was so severe that bringing another pet home was crossing the line for Po, who killed the other pet called Paulina, and now he is keeping the protagonist as a pet, taking his legs so his mobility would be limited and he would need Po to take him room to room. That's when Po rushes into the room with a board, having simple options such as food, washing up, playtime or sleep, being treated how Po was treated, being the pet now instead of Po. Po seems to have severe resentment issues and being angry, wanting to punish the protagonist yet wanting to take care of him and keep him inside the house. Knowing now that he should have listened to his instincts, the protagonist doesn't waste any more time, thinking of a plan to escape and survive this menacing entity whom he thought would be a loving and friendly pet, filling the void that he has been feeling in his life. Noticing Po has enlarged even more, being more intimidating and stronger, he remembers there's a functional toy car that he can use as a way to get around and possibly escape the house, as he cannot walk any longer. The protagonist, coming up with a plan, manages to call a local pizza shop in order to ring the doorbell and distract kidnapped Poe so he can get on the toy car and move out of the house. When he calls the pizzeria, he asks Poe to be taken to the playroom when the doorbell soon after rings, with the protagonist getting in the car to escape when he hears the scream of the delivery man being kidnapped by Poe. Feeling guilty and terrible for the delivery man, filled with adrenaline, he doesn't have time to feel bad, going as fast as he can towards the door, when all of a sudden an angered, overshadowing Poe blocks the door with its body, with blood smeared all over his mouth, throwing the protagonist out of the car and subsequently the car on him. This reveals that Poe has lost any sense of family and restraint, being a menacing, wild being who hunts any living being and eats them, which in turn makes him larger and larger instantly. Maybe it was the food that the protagonist gave him, making him larger and more unhinged, with many thoughts going in his mind, thinking if he's to blame, but he decides not to waste any more time getting back in the car. His plan changes when he lures Poe into the kitchen, turning on the gas and blowing up the house, but not before escaping, with Poe burning inside, trapped, not to hurt anyone else anymore, with both the corpses of the pizza delivery man and Paulina unfortunately burning in the house as well. Weeping and feeling sorry for what happened to them, even Poe, as he remembers him still as a baby entity, vulnerable and needing someone to feed him and play ball. He wipes his tears, calling the authorities for help, not knowing what will come of his life, having lost both his legs now and having a lot of trauma to deal with. All the protagonist wanted was a loving family, even with alien pets who were more intelligent than dogs and cats, whom the protagonist would want to see as his own children. But unfortunately, too much intelligence turns out to be dangerous, especially when other elements such as jealousy comes to play, something Poe struggled with, being extremely jealous, going so far as hurting others to be the only one shown love and attention to. And that is it for this video, folks. If you enjoyed it, make sure to stay tuned for more by hitting on the subscribe button and the notification bell. As always, it's been your host Star, and I will see you on the next one. Have a fantastic day.